Friends, welcome to National Discussion Series initiated by National Council on Social Work Education National Campaign Committee. Friends, we have initiated 2 months back a discussion series on the functions of the National Council on Social Work. And this is the third discussion series on field action project or startups in social work, where people says that social workers are lagging, but here we have uh, the leaders who have been pioneer in field work, field action project, and have done remarkable work. So we have gathered here to discuss that how this field action project will be important for the proposed council. The National Council, which we have been advocating from last 1.5 years, and now this is a part of our awareness program where we want to tell the social work community and others that what will be the function and how it will be important for the council. So today, in this discussion series, we have field action project, or in the new technological language, in the fourth revolution word language, the startups, and how it is going to be very useful and interesting in time to come. So once again, welcome on behalf of the National Campaign Committee for the National Council for Social Work Education and my own, and on behalf of my team, I welcome all the resource person for today's discussion. Professor Helen Joseph is the convener for this series. We have decided that for each series there will be a convener, and for this particular discussion, Professor Helen Joseph has agreed to be the convener and anchor for this program. So introducing the resource person and introducing the theme of field action project, I leave it to Professor Helen Joseph. Once again, welcome to this exciting series on the functions of proposed National Council. Over to Professor Helen Joseph.
Thank you so much, Professor Bhatt. Today is really a very happy occasion for me, not only because we have such a distinguished, group of speakers here, but also because, it's after a long time that many of us who are friends, have got the opportunity to meet. And I really saw right in the beginning when we met, there was so much of, what should I say, a camaraderie that was there, amongst members, that I really felt very happy that we got this opportunity to meet. In fact, to begin with, what I'm going to do or touch upon is an overview of field action projects. And to begin with, I would like to briefly go through the global definition of social work profession, which was approved by the International Federation of Social Work and the International Associations of Schools of Social Work in 2014, which states that social work is a practice-based profession and an academic discipline that promotes social change and development, social cohesion, and the empowerment and liberation of people. It goes on to state that social work is underpinned by theories of social work, social sciences, humanities, and here I would like to underline indigenous knowledge. And those social work educators, though as social work educators, we have diligently incorporated the understanding from various social sciences, developmental studies, humanities, and the like. We have to ask ourselves whether in India we have done enough to create and develop our own indigenous literature based on our experiential knowledge of this practice-based profession. Perhaps this is why much of the curriculum in most of social work institutions today is still dependent on Western literature. which of course is based on Western experiences. It would seem to me that professional social work in India still needs to further theorize and develop its own indigenous based literature, based on our own history, our cultural experiences, and practice wisdom. Field action projects, I believe, offer us one clear pathway to such indigenization. Now, what are field action projects? And I think this is important to share because many institutions of social work do not have field action projects as part of their, it's not part of their curriculum, definitely, but as an extracurricular or whatever you might call it. I mean, very few institutes of social work education have field action projects. Tata Institute field action projects, therefore, are initiated by faculty members or a student of social work institution on an experimental basis. Tata Institute of Social Sciences and the College of Social Work Nirmala Niketan are two social work institutes, educational institutes, that have initiated a number of field action projects. They have also articulated some criteria, that are to be kept in mind when starting field action projects. And I would like to adapt some of these and spell out a few of the elements that are crucial to any field action project. One is that the work initiated through a field action project should emerge as a response to a situation of crisis or a chronic social issue. This, I presume, helps social work educational institution to be in touch with what is happening around and not be so immersed in the academic teaching that it is blind or immune to the changes that emerge in the constantly changing social environment in which we live. Another criteria is, through such field action projects, it is expected that some models of social work are developed so that they are replicable and demonstrate ways of responding effectively to such social issues or crises. Third, there needs to be an institutional commitment. What do I mean by institutional? This is the commitment of the social work educational institute to the field action project. And there is always a period during which the survival of the project is always in the balance, because there is need for staff and students being allowed to set aside time for such a project, funds to keep it going. And as it tries to build on its foundation, the support and skills that are required to plan and act strategically, and a continuous monitoring and evaluation in order to maintain the quality of this. So, commitment of the Social Work Educational Institute is very, very crucial for a field action project. Experiences of the College of Social Work Nirmala Niketan, for instance, indicates that such an institutional commitment must be for a minimum period of about 5 to 8 years. Finally, and perhaps this is where there is a significant lacuna, is that there is not much done in the area of theorizing and articulating the learnings from field action projects. And this is a serious lacuna, which as educational institutes, we are and we must be concerned about. Now, how do field action projects really contribute to the profession? Field action projects, one, it promotes the process of incorporating evidence-based practice into its teaching and field training. So students are able to link theory and practice. Otherwise we know that this is very, very difficult for many of our students. We say that we need to link theory and practice, but how do we do it really? How do we really link practice? And field action projects really is one very, very crucial way by which we can do this. It also helps to design and review social work curriculum and practice on a regular basis, so that there is a constant updation of curriculum from the experiences in the. It also gives students an experience of being an integral part of initiation and development of innovative independent projects, thereby training them to be social entrepreneurs and inculcating in them a pioneering spirit. And if you look at the speakers that we have today, they've all been pioneers and they are the role models. And that we need, social work need progress. And this is something that I think is something we should really work. And if you're talking about the council, I think this is something that we really need to work towards. Field action projects also function as a springboard for new areas and models of practice that can be significantly upscaled and replicated. In some cases, these projects have themselves been institutionalized and made part of the system. This Childline, as many of us know, which started out as a field action project, become a flagship of the government. Similarly, the current practice of having professional social workers in family courts, or in hospitals, or in schools, or in prisons are examples where field action projects been incorporated into the system. You know, some field action projects have also influenced policies through interventions backed by research, documentation, advocacy, and networking, as has happened in the case of Yuva. I mean, a lot of research and documentation networking has gone into getting some of the things that they have. And I won't get into what Yuva has done because Minar is here and he will prize us of it. Documents brought out by field action projects have also served as verified data in legal proceedings and policy formulations, besides being case illustrations for classroom teaching. So through all of this, one can see that field action projects have made significant inroads in social work interventions across government and other systems and have opened up several opportunities for social workers. Now, if you look at the evolution of field action projects, a glance at the evolution of field action projects tells us that just as social work profession focused on remedial and rehabilitative models of social welfare in the beginning, so did field action projects. So, for example, Child Guidance Clinic of the Tata Institute was the first field action project that was started way back in 1937. This CGC was established for children with behavioral problems. It was unique in the fact that the clinic was set up as a separate entity in the hospital, and for the first time, a hospital-related clinic was headed by a social worker and not a medical professional. Later, the nature of professional social work changed from being only remedial or service delivery or welfare to developmental, and gradually moving on to initiatives that involved networking, advocacy, and policy-related work, keeping in mind the rights-based approach. So did the field action projects. All our speakers today have initiated various types of field action projects and demonstrate the wide variety of these projects that have evolved over the years. The range of issues taken up under field action projects today are immense. Besides working on issues of education, health, mental health, now there are projects working on issues of child rights, rights of construction workers, women's rights, sex workers, on issues of homelessness, communal harmony, environment, tribal, rural, and urban development, working with various systems like the criminal justice system, police system, on issues of governance, livelihood, disability, and many others. So there is a range of projects and issues that social workers have initiated through field action projects. Field action projects have not been without its own sets of challenges. For one, starting and sustaining field action projects have not always been easy. Faculty and students who initiate field action projects not only have to begin from scratch, they need to have the capacity to take risks, take initiatives, tolerate ambiguities and setbacks, scout for funds, write proposals, all of which are compounded by the demanding workloads that they carry. And yet, there have been many successes in such field action projects, opening up new avenues, new possibilities, and becoming a beacon of hope for the profession itself. As you can see from what our speakers, will say.
Hello, Mr. Narayan. Please mute yourself, Mr. Narayan Malik. Mute yourself.
Yes. However, though there is satisfaction that some social workers and social work institutes have thus responded to the changing times, what is not very encouraging is that there are very few social work institutions around India that are initiating or encouraging the setting up of field action projects. And besides, as we as professions have not done enough in developing our knowledge base or conceptualizing our learnings from the field. As a result, in some cases, a lot of good and even pioneering work has been done by field action projects. There has been comparatively less evidence-based literature that has emerged from these efforts. Such literature would have been able to document how much accomplished, how lives have been improved, how the interventions were planned and actually performed in the field, and what were the challenges and failures that were part of the entire experience and experiments. Such documentation and reflection could have contributed significantly to indigenous social work education. For there must always be a strong synergy between education and practice. As Adams puts it, the changes in the profession call for social workers today to be better able to describe what they are doing, cite a reason or rationale, and often provide evidence or recommendation that implementation of their recommendations will make a difference in the lives of individuals and communities. We need to do that. Even if the government has to listen to us, if the government has to take us seriously, it is important for us to show evidence. And let me end with what Klein had to say, that significant research questions will have to grow out of well-nurtured understanding of the context in which practice exists. Theory development and hypothesis testing are at their best when they draw from the rich experiences of the practiced world in a meaning and cultural context. We must, after all, never forget that social work education, as I said before, is a practice-based academic discipline and must continuously evolve and develop out of the local context into which we send our students. Field action projects are a powerful way to make this happen. And I'm sure with all that we will learn today from our very distinguished members, speakers, many other colleges would be encouraged to start or initiate field action projects in their own colleges. Thank you so much. And now, for the best part, with regard to our speakers, since Jeru, you have to rush, I think. So I would request you to start first, but before that, I will just, have us, introduce Jeru. Most of you really know her. Who in India really has not heard about Childline? And the woman behind it, Jeru Bilamoni. Yes, probably in front of it also. However, many might not know that Childline was started by Jeru as a field action project at Tata Institute. The innovative thinking behind Childline India eventually led her to set up Child Helpline International. While Childline India was eventually recognized as offering such a huge service to children in India, that is and that is the reason why the government program, it has been taken up and incorporated as a government program. Child Helpline International has facilitated a global involvement movement for protection of children and youth that is active in more than 181 countries. Am I right, Jeru? Yeah. I have always known Jeru as a live wire, a free spirit who is full of ideas and who is always evolving and looking for more. And that is clear in all that she has done over the years. Jeru is also the founder of several innovative and award-winning NGOs and has over 20 years experience in running systems change organizations. It is not surprising then that she is a scholar and an Ashoka and Shoah fellow. Among the organizations she has given birth to are Child and Youth Finance International and Aflatun International. Child and Youth Finance International is a global network of partners who have collectively created meaningful change in financial inclusion and economic citizenship education for young people in over 160 countries. While Aflatun International has succeeded in working with global partners to provide social and financial education to over 1 million children in 100 countries. Jeru is now founder of One Family Foundation, which incubates social innovations and applies a systems change methodology to help organizations scale up. One Family Foundation is anchoring Catalyst 2030. I think it is a networking organization initiated by leading social entrepreneurs from Ashoka Foundation, Echoing Green, the Schwab Foundation, the Skoll Foundation, and other global networks of social entrepreneurs. The group is inclusive and is expanding to include governments, funders, bilateral organizations, multilateral organizations, and others seeking the timely achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, Jeru, we can keep talking about her and her innovations for maybe a whole day. We do not have that much time, Jeru. So now I'm so very
Thanks.
glad that you can join us, even though it is from a taxi or wherever you are. Don't know. Thank you so much, Jeru, for joining. Yeah.
Thanks, Helen.
I would request just 1 minute. I would request Devi Prasad ji to please even keep our time so that we do not run.
Yeah,
over.
I have 7 minutes, right? And I'll make sure I finish in my 7 minutes.
You have 15.
Okay.
You have 15 minutes. Yes.
Okay. So moving with, first of all, thank you very much, Helen. Thank you, Devi Prasad ji. Really excited that we are looking at field action projects, because the most exciting thing about my time, both as a student at Tata Institute and as a faculty member, was the field action projects. So what I'm going to talk about is A, the importance, B, how academic institutes can support field action projects better, because taking them off can be challenging from time to time, and C, what it takes to make them scale and how to make it happen. But before I start on field action projects, I have to talk about Dr. D, Dr. Desai, whom everyone knows, we all love to death, and the most important course which helped me start the field action projects in my thinking, and that was integrated social work practice. I think that is the most phenomenal course, which is for me the basis of not just my field action projects, but a lot of the thinking which has gone in for me even after that. So I think that's something, as you all are doing it, please keep that in mind. That course gave what I think is today becoming more and more important, and also what Catalyst, my latest organization, talks about. So Dr. D was way ahead of her time, which is a systems approach to change. And I think that's what something which is really important. Okay. So I think I really want to put that up front, because both my projects. So my first field action project in Tata Institute was Meljol. Meljol started, and I'll say the mistakes I made also. Meljol started as a twinning project, and what I didn't do right at the onset was involve educationists and policymakers. So Meljol went on to become its own NGO, but what happened is it didn't achieve the level of scale that could have happened vis-a-vis curriculum integration and all of that. So Meljol's doing great, everything's great, but that was my one learning. So when I started Childline a year after, the first thing we did, and that was also because the street children were very demanding and I listened to them very, very well. They said, Didi, we want something, a phone number, which will be able to be the same number all over India. So I listened to my street kids, and that's the most important, right? So that's why we started getting in MTNL and the government from day one. Over here, I again want to really thank Dr. Desai, because what helped was having the backing of an organization like Tata Institute of Social Sciences. If any individual person had gone, if Jaru alone had gone, government would not have given me the 1098 number. So it's because there was Tata Institute that we were able to. And I say this because in every city state, this is the critical role that academic institutions can play in linking to policy change. So that is my one recommendation when we are doing it, because a field action project without it adhering to and linking to the larger systems change, like a MailJoel, can remain a fantastic project, but it's at that level. Ultimately, everything that comes out of an academic institute should be to shape policy, to shape systems, to get behavioral change at a mass scale. So I think that was my one learning, and that's where academic institutes and field action projects can help, getting the systems perspective into field action projects right from the beginning. And I say this also because then when we started getting MTNL in, we were able to get the government in also much, much, much easier. And that became my learning for all my other projects, which I went and took forward. Another thing I think, and I think this will come into social work education, I'll be honest, it didn't come in my education, but I know it's there much more now, is integrating a lot of management skills and principles. So a lot of the management skills and principles which I studied in the US, I was able to bring in, right from social franchising to everything. However, the basis was systems change. Okay, Dr. Desai's integrated social work practice. But being able to combine community work, systems thinking, and also being able to take forward the whole aspect of policy change is what made Childline go national and scale up in 3 years to 39 states, which the government had said will never happen. And today, as you all know, I think Childline is in 660 states. I, for one, have absolutely nothing to do with Childline. I want to state that clearly. Means they are very sweet. They call me, they tell me, I will meet the minister, I'll do nice, hanji banji, but I have no role. Absolutely. I'm also pointing this out because I think this is also something which is very interesting for me, because I think me stepping out also facilitated Childline's growth. And I think I always say this because there is always the question of founder syndrome. It also gave me the liberty to grow. And I remember at that time wanting to do that. Dr. Desai is like, Jaru, you're a butterfly. You start one thing, you move to another. And I was like, no, Dr. D, this is my strategy, entry and exit. So I think this was something which is also very important, which we probably need to build into our field action projects. Another thing, which is a tip if we are going to ask people to do field action projects, is please reduce the course load. Everyone over here who has done field action projects will say, having 7 subjects, 9 students, and having field action projects is very difficult. And that was what was happening. So I think that's something which should also be taken as a tip, which I thought was very important and which could be taken. I want to step, because I have the luxury of having shifted and being able to take things global. I want to also link, if it's okay with you, Helen, how the project, which started in India, have influenced global systems change. And so Childline has been written about, Child Helpline has been written about, but now what I'm trying to do is I'm actually trying to shift through Catalyst narrative paradigms and thinking for foreign academics to start looking at how Indian social movements, Indian community organization techniques, sorry, I have to step out of the cab, Indian social work techniques and all have actually influenced change. And so India actually has a fantastic way, and this is where our field action projects come in, where a lot of our thinking in social work, in systems entrepreneurship, is very, very, very much based on our social behaviors. And European thinking is very much based on individual behaviors. So being able to take that, now is the time for India and India's field action projects to be able to move to the next level in thinking globally. So this would be my last point. And I say this because we actually have an academic working group which I instituted in Catalyst, which is
Janu,
looking
you have
at
2 minutes
concepts
to
in,
conclude.
I finished, which is instituting academic points and taking them then into the global curriculum. So my only thing is field action projects are critical. They shaped it. Make sure it is linked to systems change. Make sure it's linked to Dr. Desai's integrated practice course updated. Give people, academics who are doing it more time. And make sure policy is woven in right from the beginning. These are my main points. Thank you very much. I'm listening but I will have to go off camera. Thanks a million.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so
I'm
much
sorry,
for coming.
I was
I know you're very busy.
traveling. I had a long commitment for traveling, but when Helen asked, I could never say no. So there it is.
Thanks, Jeru. All right. We'll go. We'll keep the question and answers for later. So I'll go to the next speaker, Minar Pimple. One would wonder whether an MSW student, would be able to initiate a field action project. After all, he's a student. But Minar Pimple was one such student who literally, thought and was always in the, in a kind of state where he was questioning, challenging, wondering what he can do next. And Minar Pimple, who felt that, well, something needs to be done. And that is how he set up YUVA, which is Youth for Unity and Voluntary Action, and which was supported, of course, by the college. In fact, the college was forced to support it, if I'm not mistaken, because he was so compelling in the way he went about it, So I was glad that I was one of his faculty advisors during that time. He gave me a tough time too, but a very, very worthwhile interaction that we had with Minar. Today, Minar functions as an executive coach and consultant in the social development sector. After 15 years of engagement on various global and regional roles, Minar returned to India and set up MP Consulting Services. MP would be Minar Pimple? Yes, okay. To provide leadership development support along with training and facilitation in the areas of organization diagnostics, design and development, sustainable development goals, strategy, program monitoring, evaluation, CSR advisory, all assignments customized to suit the client's needs and expectations. He retired from Amnesty International as a senior director of global operations. And prior to that, he was regional director of UN Millennium Campaign under the aegis of UNDP, where he led the campaign's Asia Pacific operations and advocacy. He has also held roles as executive director of Decade of Human Rights in New York. He was the founder and chief executive officer of YUVA, a civil society organization that promotes human rights and sustainable development for urban and rural poor in India. Minar has played various global board roles with Habitat International Coalition, Oxfam International, where he was the founder chair of Oxfam India. In all the above roles, Minar has undertaken extensive work around coaching, monitoring, as well as training and capacity building for leaders from grassroots to policy and decision makers in government and non-government. I have, as I said, been closely associated with Minar for many years, first when he was a student at NN pursuing his master's, and later on in my association with YUVA itself. I am witness to his determination, the vision he has, the perspective that he gives, to various issues, his capacity to lead and take an organization, and not only the organization, but the people together with it. So thank you so much, Minar, for accepting our invitation. Please make your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you very much for setting up this conversation so beautifully by reminding us of the definition of social work as well as the criteria to select field action projects. I'm really grateful with to number of people, Farida Lambe being one of the first ones. If anybody who needs to be blamed for getting me into social work, it's Farida, who gave me the admission at Bachelor of Social Work. She always says that I don't know who interviewed whom in that interview, but so Farida was one of the first ones whom I met and continuously interacted with. And Jeru made my job a little easier by mentioning Dr. Armaiti Desai, because she played a very, very pivotal role in the integrated social work practice, but not only as a teacher, but as a person who really gave space and scope for a number of things to be done. And Nirmala Niketan as a whole, to be honest, I have had fantastic teachers, Dr. Arhana, who really brought me to really a strong analytical thinking. She used to keep looking at EPW articles and looking at those articles and how do we link those analysis coming from the Economic and Political Weekly to social situations. So those are kinds of things. I've had people like Sister Magdalene, who taught me very basics of accounting, because I was managing accounts of youth project in College of Social Work. So there are many people who influenced me. But I also must say that there were teachers with whom I didn't get along at all, who really had problems. I had conceptual problems with them. Like one of the teachers I had, and I'm not going to mention those names, I will mention those names which were very powerful influences on me. But somebody speaking, please be on mute, Subrashri Samal. Okay. So some of the teachers, like there was one of the teachers who were very proudly telling us as students that, her 1960s notes were still important in 1990s. And one of my questions, I said, so that means since then you haven't learned much. And that really started a long-term enmity. We had teachers who used to be believing in saying that overpopulation is the cause of underdevelopment. And I would challenge them saying, hello, which era you are living in? All the new theories are very clearly saying overpopulation has nothing to do with underdevelopment. It's the approach, and there are structural issues and structural problems. There were teachers who would tell, crime is criminal is the crime of not a crime of society. And I used to say, no, criminal is the crime of society. So for me, I think what is important, the time when I joined social work in '79, it was a post-emergency era. So that context is important. It was a much more liberal context, post-emergency era where, Indira Gandhi was solely completely defeated, with a kind of a new thinking, new emergent of social movements. Jayaprakash Narayan, as a very inspiring leader, had initiated non-formal education all over the country, and non-formal education on the Paulo Freirean line, which was basically pushing social action. So that was extremely helpful as a context. So the context is important, teachers and with whom you work. So Nafisa D'Souza, who was my project director for the youth project, I joined as a fieldwork student in the second year in the youth project, and I was a field placement for 2 years in BSW. And then, of course, I joined as a staff, as a coordinator of the youth project. So that was a kind of a journey. I may be one of the first ones who was actually employed in the very first year of BSW, because I left home, I had no money. And Farida, though I was not coming from the economically backward, my family was not economically backward. I told Farida, but I'm economically backward because I have no other source of income. And that's where BSW 1, I started getting 250 rupees a salary on a field project, working with the construction workers' children which were building the new assembly hall in Mumbai. So that was very inspiring times for me. There was a lot of debate and discussion. I remember 3 streams which were happening in College of Social Work simultaneously. Charna Siganporia was leading this whole project on community organizing and community development. Daurinagar, Hanuman Tekri were deeply discussed issues. Dominic D'Souza was leading on this rural work with Vananiketan in Murbad, which was basically the whole intervention with the tribal communities and how do we reshape that. And that work still continues with Indavi's leadership, who was my classmate also, as Vananiketan and then Shramik Mukti Sanghatan, which is very important. That was also a field action project which came into Vananiketan. I don't know what happened with Daurinagar and Hanuman Tekri. But the third action project that I was involved with Nafisa as a project director was youth project. So 2 geographically focused urban-rural communities, 1 social social group focus, which is intervention with young people. And it had 2 elements to it. One was the action, how do we organize youth so that they can take leadership and work on issues of their community. One of the basic slogan we had from the very beginning, and that slogan is still, I think, very significant and important, is those who face the issues, they must lead to work on those issues. So building leadership from the grassroots. And it was very nice that just recently RSCD and College of Social Work published a book in honor of Rajesh Kuruvilla, which has a chapter on Yuva's journey. And some of those people that we work with, Durga Gudulu, who joined us in the tribal community school that we used to run, is now a social activist who has challenged long-held community practices of community panchayats, externing families. So Durga now is a name by herself. Or if you look at Sanjay Ghorpade in Washim, he started as our youth activist with Yuva's Anubhav Shiksha program. He's now the member of the Jilla Parishad. Or you look at somebody like Mohan Surve. There are 14 people who joined Nirmala Niketan from the Yogeshwari community. Mohan Surve is one of those now who has become a CEO of Vikas Sahyog Pratishthan. In 1984, when I started work in Yogeshwari, he was a shy but very reflective young person. And now he's the CEO of one of the networking organizations in Maharashtra, very influential organization in Maharashtra. So we build a lot of cadres from below as leaders, and that is what was critical for sustaining a lot of the work. And the second thing, a lot of the people from Yuva's touch, like if you look at Lisa John, who is now the General Secretary of Civicus, which is a global organization. Lisa joined us as a summer intern when she was doing her master's in TISS. From there, now as a General Secretary of a large civil society organization globally is a very fantastic kind of achievement that one sees of evolution. So building leaders from ground, building professional competencies and capacities for working with, working globally, working nationally. Kavita Krishnamurthy, another example, who has worked with the children in special need and has a strong network across the country in India, was another person who started as a volunteer with Yuva when she was in Xavier College, but then she did her master's in TISS, and now she leads this work globally. So I think some of those trends are very, very important. Because I have a limited time, I can go on in terms of actually saying a number of things that we have been able to achieve in those areas, and some of the work that we really took from local to global. So if you look at some of the Yuva initiatives on housing rights, on hawkers rights, we did a survey of the hawkers in the city of Mumbai with TISS, and that survey was a basis on which we formed certain recommendations, build network across the country, and the hawkers policy. I wouldn't say it was only us. Many organizations were involved in that process, but the hawkers policy was the result of that. If you look at the housing rights,
to conclude.
Okay. If you look at housing rights, we look at the whole issue of Committee for the Right to Housing, National Campaign for Housing Rights, Asian Coalition for Housing Rights, Habitat International Coalition, so from local to global. So the idea of bringing advocacy, bringing networking, alliance and coalition building was extremely useful from the perspective that we work with. Last one I would say is I have learned a lot in terms of social work profession, the values and philosophy. The key challenge we have today is how do we locate the social indigenization in the constitutional framework of India, the values and philosophy of Indian constitution, and how do we integrate that philosophy and values with the constitution on one hand, and as a global marker, integrating it with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So if these two things we do very well in education as well as practice, I think the future challenges that we have will be much more equipped to do. I'm really concerned with the mushrooming of the institutions of schools of social work all over the country. I'm not too sure, and I don't know if there's any study exists, Sanjay can help us with that, of the quality of education and quality of professionals which are being churning out of these institutions. Because that may not be the best thing that can happen. And I hope that the National Council will undertake that kind of a role. And the last one I would say, there's so much of rich work because we have always believed as youth development and human resource development going hand in hand so that we create a next level of cadre for taking the leadership. And that's what I did in Yuva because we wanted to build a centurion organization, which means that you have to disassociate yourself and build new leaders to take the torch forward. And I'm extremely happy. I left Yuva when it was 20 years old. It's now 27 years old. We have always had professional social workers on the board. It was led by Nafiza as the starting chairperson, followed by Farida, Gagan Sethi, who has been from the Baroda School of Social Work, Jeremy Hobbs, who helped us in terms of transforming our governance system from bringing it to compliance to professional board was also a social worker from Australia who helped us in that whole process. So we've linked with social workers globally. I have been inspired by Professor Sugata Dasgupta, whom actually Armati Desai brought to give us a lecture. And I really found his ideas very radical. And I wrote one of the pieces in the Perspectives in Social Work before I left Nirmal Niketan after my master's. And that piece that I wrote, I still believe that a lot of the things that I had outlined, how do we really locate social work as the harbinger of social change and transformation, rather than it being just the remedial kind of a profession. So I think that's the challenge that we have. And though some of those challenges still continue, I'm sure with the National Council coming up, it will get a new energy and new power to build this learning that we have had from things like Yuva. I'm still waiting for somebody from TISS and Nirmal Niketan doing a study on Yuva and building the kind of theoretical work that we have done ourselves, which can be brought in as case studies to be taught in the academic institutions nationally and even globally. So I really echo that thing of really bringing the indigenous knowledge at the forefront and starting to wean away from the American models of social work and the social work practice and really build indigenous, locally relevant, locally impactful model of social work education and practice. So thank you very much. I would be available for questions. We can speak on these issues for days, as Helen said. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minar. Brought back lots of memories. Now, may I request Farida Lambe? When Farida Lambe actually started the municipal school project, I think that also Dr. Armati Desai played a very, very important role there too, I think, Farida. There was little hope that professional social workers would be allowed to infiltrate into the municipal school system. And yet, because of that field action project, today professional social workers are very much part of the municipal school system in Mumbai. So these are some of the achievements of professional social workers, and I'm really, really very proud about all of them. Mrs. Lambe retired as Vice Principal of the College of Social Work, Nirmal Niketan. And during her time at NN, Ms. Lambe spearheaded several initiatives and field action projects and multiple disaster relief efforts in connection with, whether it is the riots, whether it is the Latur earthquake, whether it is Orissa cyclone, you just name it and Mrs. Lambe is there, just ready, to kind of get involved. She's the person who gets involved. So that's how I know Mrs. Lambe. She has, as most of you know, is also the co-founder of Pratham, an initiative that she and Mr. Dr. Madhav Chavan put together. And it's now, Pratham is on the map of India. And with regard to the work in the area of education. Besides being a crusader for education, she has also led the battle against child labor by heading Pratham Council for Vulnerable Children. She has been on several committees of the government and local bodies, contributed to the formulation of many progressive policies, both in the area of education and child labor. She was appointed member of the Maharashtra State Commission for the Protection of Child Rights. She was a part of the Sachar Committee, the Maharashtra State Security Council, the Government of India Committee on Child Labor, and several others. She has also been recognized by different awards. She received, one was the Indira Gandhi Memorial Award for her contribution to education and child rights, the award presented by Social Justice and Peace Committee, the Best Teacher Award presented by the Municipal Corporation, and the Ahilya Holkar Award presented by Maharashtra government. Besides being an educationist and a social work professional, she has been the chairperson of BATSW and an active member of MASWE, that is the Maharashtra Association of Social Work Educators, and a friend and an integral part of the National Campaign Committee. So thank you very much, Farida. You are a friend and feels very good to have you. Please, go ahead. Thank you.
No, because I'm your friend, I was a little embarrassed that you were reading out my profile.
Why?
So anyway,
I know.
thank you.
I shouldn't miss out anything, you see.
It's always good to hear good things about yourself, but I think I've had some great people around here, and I'm very humbled by what you said. So thank you. To start this my entire conversation today, I think I've shared my presentation to you, Helen. I don't know whether you've got it. Uh, uh, there is a PPT, but in the flow of things, if you feel that the PPT is not necessary, I can stay away from it. But I do have a presentation which I've mailed you, but that's fine. Okay. Uh, Helen, you are saying something?
Helen, unmute yourself.
Sorry, yeah. Murli, is it possible to share it immediately? Because
Yeah, I can share it. Yeah, let's see.
It's not necessary, Helen, because the flow, the way people have spoken, I don't have to have that. But if you want to have it as a background,
whatever, whatever
Okay,
you
yeah,
feel
it'll be
comfortable
more.
with.
yeah, I'll start talking because we will not waste
Okay,
more time.
okay, great.
Basically, I think I want to resonate with what Jeru said. So when I'm called the founder and I've been a founder of school social work, not at all. I think it was the whole vision and the idea of Armati Desai. I think Jeru has said enough about her, and she has been our mentor right from 1971. And I think she had it all in her mind that if a field action project needs to be started, there were two things which I think were very important. One, to place a student in one of the municipal school, and I was made the scapegoat that time because we didn't know anything about municipal schools. The only plus point that I had, because Helen did ask me my motivation, I think the plus point I had was that I was a former student of a municipal school. I studied in a municipal school because my father, being in the government service, always believed that there has to be a neighborhood school and there has to be an equality. So he put all of us in the municipal school. And I was there from third to fifth, from second to third, fifth, fourth in a municipal school. And nothing wrong happened to me. I'm right in, with you. So from that point of view, so municipal school were there and they had good quality education where all the neighborhood children went. So that was my, I think, a little passion or motivation, if you may call it. And Miss Desai had found out about it in one of the interviews, and smart woman that she is, she put me in that municipal school as a school placement. So I was the first student to start that placement, and I got stuck royally with municipal schools for 30 long years. Yeah. But to tell you the truth, yeah, I didn't regret even one day because everything that happened within this whole project was not only lively, dynamic, but every day was learning. Now, when we talk about field action projects, and I think everybody has talked about it, the other aspect of linking, say, primary education with field action with College of Social Work. Why? One of the things I think Ms. Desai always visualized, and we all will agree, that higher education should not be in isolation. Higher education is not about university. Higher education is not all about people sitting in the libraries and doing PhDs. Higher education should be linked with ground realities. Higher education has to be linked with primary education because primary education, right from early childhood education, is really the foundation of higher education. The other aspect of this is that how many of us really make it to the higher education? Yeah, in the last 35 years, things have changed. But when, say, 1971 and those days, 70 days in which Minar also talked about, people going into higher education was a very, very small percentage. So when we started off with the municipal school project, I remember in Mumbai, we had almost 40% of children who didn't go to school. We had another 35% of children who were dropping out. So what were we talking about? We were talking about Mumbai city, the capital, the industrial capital, where children of the masses were not going to school. And we had these large institutions where some of us were enjoying higher education. So how do we give back to the society? And I think that was the vision, that how do you link higher education with primary education? When you talk about field action projects, I think enough has been written out, and I think Helen said it very, very beautifully. But I just want to add on that one of the important aspects about a field action project is that you integrate theory with learning. Definitely. I always believed, and I till now believe, that social work cannot be taught in classrooms. Social work has to be taught beyond your classrooms. So, Ms. Desai again had this some unwritten law, and Lata would agree with me in this, that all of us who were practitioners, who were working, say, in municipal schools or we were working somewhere, we were made to work for 4 to 5 years. And if we made the, if fitted the bill, we were enrolled into the faculty. Of course, we had interviews and all that. I'm not saying we were just taken, but one of the bases was, continue, work, make your hands dirty, look at the ground realities, and then come and teach in the classroom. I think that was excellent what Ms. Desai did, and that I really owe it to her for what the person and the professional that I am today. The other one, which is on the field action project, is that when you talk about an enabling environment, when you talk about an enabling environment as an institution, what is an enabling environment? That you need to have a philosophy of the college, and the college has to believe that, in this case, it is education. So, primary education was the need of the day. There were deprivations, there were vulnerable children. So, you were reaching out to the need. It is also important for the college to understand that you gain from there, that there is a value add. Okay, and therefore the College of Social Work, particularly, created an enabling environment by starting these field action projects. Now, when you started these field action projects, I remembered and I've written it down that there are many things that the College of Social Work did. One is that the College of Social Work believed that you must have a large learning unit. So, in a municipal school, for example, in one school, there were 14, 15 people put in one school because it was a field action project. And why you want a large unit? Because there's a peer learning, there is group learning, there's a unit whereby the faculty, and again co-sharing, that it can't be only one faculty, it should be two faculties dealing with 15 students, so that there is co-sharing, there's again peer learning. I think this was again a very important ingredient in my life, in my professional life, because that teaches you how to take people with you. You may agree to disagree, okay, but how to take people with you. Now, the other one about field action project is that it kind of allows you to put theory into practice, and of course practice into theory. And we used to always have these arguments that the practice is far beyond and our theory is, we are still talking about individuals, we are still talking about casework, but look at where the practice is. And I think the field action projects allows you to challenge what you're teaching in the classroom and how you can be continuously relevant. And I think that's another important ingredient of our field action project. The other enabling environment I would say is that when the field action project started, and the municipal school project is one such example, where we had decided earlier, and there were lots of questions, and these questions are again in my PPT, is that is do we have small is beautiful is the way to go? Do we work in depth or do we work in width? Okay. How many years do you continue with this field action project? Is it 5 years? Is it 8 years? Is it 10 years? What is the entry and the exit point? Okay. And what makes you exit? Whom do you work with? You work with the system. And as far as the municipal corporation was concerned, we were very clear from day one that this is going to bring about a systems change. It is not a system maintenance function, though I must admit that we started with system maintenance. We started with a remedial approach because that was the need of the hour. And we had to get children to school. We had to make parents aware. We had to say that you have to stem the rate of dropout because you're wasting so much of human resources. So that was remedial. But gradually we got into a developmental mode where we said that let the community engage itself so that the community says that my child should learn. And if the community says that my child will not work, but that my child will learn, I think the change happens. So all these theories of change, when we talk about community engagement, I think that came alive in the school social work project. And we decided that it has to be systems change. And we had also decided that gradually systems will take it over. Helen had said in the note what were the challenges and what were the difficulties. There were many difficulties, especially with the municipal school project, because it was a grant in it project of the corporation. Money did not always come on time. So one had,
you have 1 minute more.
okay, we had to pull in from different resources, and one had to work with that. Also, because lack of time, I just want to say that one of the challenge was how do you build ethos in the college. So what this entire municipal school project education, I'm not even talking about Pratham now, is what education did was that we started a subject on education, which was not there. Intervention in the field of education, intervention in the field of health. We started a course on disaster management because there were riots, there were so many disasters that Helen has already talked about, and we were trying to see what we can do. So we immediately started, subjects. The other thing is that we also believed that MSWs and BSWs are not the only game changers. They are not the only people who will change the world. And therefore, when UA happened, or when we were also working with the municipal school project, we consciously took a decision to start paraprofessional, to have frontline workers, to work. We had an excellent ICDS training center where we worked with the government because we want to demonstrate to all the schools of social work that this is your place and you could have frontline workers. Don't worry only about MSWs and BSWs. I just want to make one point, David Prasad, and I will stop. I know there is lack of time. The other one, which was important in this entire ethos, is how do you weave in your lectures and everything that you do in the college. For example, I remember those days in 90s also, we had a lot of research studies, a lot of term papers, a lot of integrated practice seminars on children, on rights of children, on education, on community awareness, rural, urban. We were continuously fighting, and even in our faculty
Time is up,
meeting,
Farida.
yeah, I'll just take a second. That in the faculty meeting, we were constantly debating remedial vis-a-vis development. And I think what the College of Social Work and what the field action has taught me and taught all of us is that you need to be beyond your classroom and you need to work with shades of gray because there's no black and white. And your students ultimately should see what you're saying and you do it. So you walk the talk. Don't just say it or not do it. That's all. I'm sorry I've taken time, but I will be available for questions. I have lots to say. That's why I wanted the PPT.
Oh. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Farida. Our next speaker is Professor Vijay Raghavan. In fact, the name that crops up always when we are thinking about criminal justice and social work, the name that pops up is Vijay Raghavan. And he is, we've been associated with him even when we were at PHTSW. And it was a very good association, so good memories. Now, Professor Vijay Raghavan is the project director of two field action projects. One is Prayas and the other is Tanda, which works on the rights and rehabilitation of criminal justice affected populations and nomadic tribes. Vijay Raghavan, professor at Tata Institute, he did his MA in social work with specialization in criminology and correctional administration and PhD in social work and criminology. He has more than 3 decades of experience of working with youth offenders as also on issues of legal aid and access to justice for under trial prisoners. He has been part of numerous public interest litigation on under trials and women rescued from commercial sexual exploitation, and member of various committees appointed by the government courts to suggest measures to address problems faced by prisoners and under trials. As part of Prayas, he has developed a model rehabilitation program for criminal justice affected persons, which help them to re-enter the social mainstream through the NGO sector. So a very, very different altogether from the ones that we are always accustomed to. And that is the reason I said I must get Vijay on board for these to discuss about field action projects. Thank you so much, Vijay, for joining in.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you, Helen. And thanks to this very, very interesting panel that has been put together by your team, because one rarely gets an opportunity to interact with colleagues who have all traveled more or less the same journey. Some of them have reached very far, and some of them are still on the way. So I would like to see myself as somebody who is still going along the way. My whole journey in social field action project, just a little bit about that, started because, again, we are all talking about the influence of teachers. Everybody here so far has talked about teachers, and for me, the teacher who pushed me in this direction was Dr. Sanobar Sani. Earlier, people know Dr. Sanobar Shekhar. Dr. Sani was a professor in the Department of Criminology and Correctional Administration, and I was a student there. And in the second year, I remember asking my seniors, what placement should I opt for? And they said, you opt for prison, because if you opt for prison, Dr. Sani will supervise you. And we were all competing with each other to have her as the supervisor. My journey in prison social work started with me being placed at Arthur Road Jail. And this was way back in 1988, 89. And that turned out to be something which was, has had a lasting impact on my career and life. After completing my field work, when we were about to graduate, she asked me whether I'm ready to work with her to start a full-time field action project. And I didn't have any clear ideas at that point of time in terms of what I wanted to do. In fact, I was preparing for the civil services examination. I wanted to be an IAS officer and change the world, kind of a thing. But I said, okay, and till I'm sure what I want to do, 1 year is okay. I gave a commitment for 1 year. And that 1 year became 2 years and 3 years, and then there was no way to turn back. I became a life convict in this space. So Dr. Sani's influence in, she had done her PhD on women under trial prisoners, and it was based on her PhD work that she felt that there is a need to start work in this field. And then gradually she started placing students first in prison, then in courts, then in police stations, then in other institutions for women and children. And that whole thing turned into something which we converted into the objective of Prayas, which is social work in the criminal justice system. And because what we identified was that the criminal justice system currently consists of police, prisons, judiciary, and legal aid, defense lawyers, and prosecution. But one wing which is missing in the criminal justice system is the rehabilitation and the social work wing. And therefore, you need social workers in the entire span of the criminal justice system. You need social workers in police stations, you need social workers in courts, you need social workers in prisons, you need social workers in the legal aid system, etc., etc. And within 3 years of starting Prayas, in fact 2 years, she had submitted a proposal to the Director General of Police, Maharashtra, saying that there should be a cadre of trained social workers in the criminal justice system. And on that basis, the Director General of Police at that point set up a committee called the Police Justice Committee to examine the need and role for social workers in the criminal justice system. By 1993, a report was submitted to the government, the Home Department, saying that such a cadre is very useful, not only to the citizens, but also to the system. Because a lot of the cases that come to the police or they end up in the prison or in courts, they need psychosocial and rehabilitative services, and it will also improve the image of the system as far as the public is concerned. We in '93 were very excited, thinking that our work in Prayas is over now. That now soon a cadre will be set up and all social workers will be appointed in all the prisons and courts and police stations. And, we organized a workshop where we called all the big stakeholders, senior officers, and there was so much of excitement. That's it. That was the end of the whole story. We went and banged our head against the government departments and home secretary and chief secretary. And everywhere we were told two things. One is government doesn't have the money. to hire and appoint social workers. The other thing we were told is, once you become part of the system, you will become like us. So it is better if you stay outside. And that struggle has continued till today. And we have reached a point where now there is a pilot project which has been implemented by the government in collaboration with the Tata Trust first and now with TISS, where social workers have been appointed in 5 central jails, again on contract basis. And it is hoped that when this project gets over, which is a 3-year project right now, there might be a way forward in terms of institutionalization. So we have not been very successful when it comes to the idea of institutionalizing the post of social workers within the system, but we have not given up, and we think that one day it will happen. The important thing I also want to add here, everyone here so far has talked about Dr. Desai's role, and I think it's very important for any head of the institution to be supportive to such initiatives. And we had a very similar experience when Prayas was started. Both Santoor and I got the full support of Dr. Desai as the director of TISS. And not only when it came to introducing or putting our name before the system, etc., but also when it came to funding. I clearly remember, when we had zero money, we started the project with some 4,000 rupees, which was a leftover from another project. She called Mr. R.M. Lala at Tata Trust and told him, that I'm sending you these jailbirds, do something and make sure that they get support. And that is how our association also with Tata Trust started, which really helped in cementing. Over a period of time, I think Prayas has made some significant developments, particularly in the area of prison reforms, visibilizing the group of children of prisoners, which is a completely invisible group, children inside prison with their mothers and children left outside when the person is incarcerated, especially women prisoners, children. Looking at the whole issue of rehabilitation of custodial populations as an issue. In terms of outreach, has reached out to thousands of people who are caught in the web of the criminal justice system, both victims and offenders. But more importantly, having made a space for rehabilitation at the policy level, which has reflected in some changes like that there is a grant in aid now for released prisoners in Maharashtra where...
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Oh my God, okay. They get a grant of 25,000 rupees on release from prison. And the budget also has increased from 12 lakhs to 1 crore, right, in the last budget. So the short point that I want to make is that I think field action projects are the heart and soul of social work education, at least the way we have learned social work education. I know that apart from TISS, NN, and a few other colleges of social work, field action is not something that we see very well entrenched within the social work education space. And I think that is why this particular webinar is very, very important to try and drive home the point that if you want social work education to make an impact, both in terms of field and policy, especially in a country like India where professional social work is still not established, it is very important that institutions of social work, colleges of social work, departments of social work must reach out into the field. They must try and extend their services, both in terms of providing services as well as in making policy changes. I think all the people who are present today on the panel are examples of that. And let me tell you that when we started off, we did not think in this way. I remember, starting off saying that we will do some work for a few years, but as you grow, support starts coming in, and I think things start falling into place. So I'd like to stop here. Time is very short. I had thought of many things, but we'll take it up in question answer if it comes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vijay. I know I really feel so terrible that all of you have to speak, but we got in, I think, quite a number of people. Maybe we could have got more, but it's this time is always a problem. Anyway, now today we have the last speaker for the day, and that is Trupti Panchal Zaveri. She's been my student, very, very sweet person, the youngest probably of the lot.
No, no, we are batchmates. Just because I have gray hair.
Sorry?
I said we are batchmates.
Oh, you're a batchmate. Okay,
Yes.
so
Just because I have gray hair.
No, Vijay is a professor. Don't forget that.
No, no, no.
probably I'm biased because she was my student when she was in BSW. So I still think of her as a BSW student. Anyway, so it may interest you to know that today there are 329 offices of the special cell for women and children strategically located in Police Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Delhi, and Haryana. And processes are also on, there to set up in Bihar, UP, Punjab, Meghalaya, and Assam. So you see the coverage, of the special cell for women and children. What is even more interesting is to note that all this started with the establishment of two major field action projects on the issue of violence against women, that is Resource Center for Interventions on Violence Against Women and Special Cell for Women and Children, Maharashtra. And Dr. Trupti, I'll just call you Trupti now,
Yes.
is assistant professor and chairperson at the Center for Women-Centered Social Work in the School of Social Work, Tata Institute, where she engages in teaching, research, and field action work. Today, Trupti is leading a team of 82 personnel to supervise 300 plus special cells across India. These special cells are set up to give socio-legal services and a multi-agency coordinated response on cases related to violence against women. She also works with 9 state government departments, police, judiciary, NGOs, etc. on innovating, demonstrating, and hand-holding and evaluating state-based violence against women intervention models. Trupti has been actively involved with action research. Her recently completed research project is in the area of intervention research and law, child sexual abuse, child marriage, domestic violence, and sexual harassment at workplace. She also received awards from the Times of India Foundation for her contribution in the field of women's rights. And in 2010, she received an appreciation memento and certificate from the Sheriff of Mumbai for her contribution in the field of women's empowerment. Though she did both her master's and PhD in Tata Institute, I feel proud that she's been a student of NN2, where she completed her bachelor's. Yeah. She's a simple and down-to-earth person, full of life and energy, and from whom I think we can learn a lot. Thank you very, very, very much, Trupti. Your bubbly nature is something that I think is infectious and probably it takes you far. Thanks so much, Trupti, for being there. Yeah.
Yeah. So do I have 15 minutes or do I have 7 minutes?
Actually, 15 minutes is what I said, but I think now...
okay, because I've prepared for 15, so I'm going to cut short into my slices.
As much as you can. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to... everybody has set a precedent. I have to start by acknowledging my educators who are on this panel. Helen Joseph, Dr. Professor Lambe, and Dr. Devi Prasad, all of Dr. Murli Desai, all of them, and my colleagues Minar, Vijay, and Jaru. So I think, I have learned a lot from all of you all, and today I stand here tall and having such a great introduction from Helen is my honor. To talk about, to building on what Vijay just talked about and how we all have our own individual journeys. I was also placed in Special Cell for Women and Children as a student in 1988, way back then. And then I worked a little while with Yuva and Minar, and I have grown in that time to be able to understand what my niche and my understanding and connect with the criminal justice system was. And at that point of time, I think the environment plays a very important role in any field action project's life, where women's movement was juxtaposed into legal reforms. And we were having 498A was IPC was being brought in for looking at domestic violence after the Mathura rape case and the historic judgment. I think all that played a very important role in critically bringing on the table what came through a meeting between Julio Ribeiro and the HOD of Family and Child Welfare Department of Tata Institute, Professor Meenakshi Apte. And I think that particular meeting was very historic because she brought on the ground the need of the women who were violated, and they wanted much more than criminalizing their partners, criminalizing the violence, and they wanted much more on the table. So that particular historic meeting between Giulio Ribeiro and Professor Meenakshi Apte culminated into starting of this project called the Special Cell for Women and Children in police stations, and in 1984. So now somebody, today we also talked about end date and start date of a field action project. And actually this field action project is going on, and I'm going to talk about that as to what are the reasons why a field action project also keeps on continuing and developing newer mandates and newer vision and newer ways of making inroads, and how state system is so difficult to make inroads with. So this was 1984, which we began work, and in the initial stages, working with system is very heavy. Trust is very difficult to build because we come as social workers with a lot of trust and belief in people, and police come with exactly the opposite mandate, to doubt people, to criminalize people, and to punish people. So those two different mandates had to come together to be able to make sense of that particular whole approach as to what will we do with women was very, very important. And the beauty of the police commissioner at that point of time, we were allowed to evolve. We did not have a blueprint. We were allowed to chart out our own strategies, our own ways of doing things, and how we evolved. So starting happened in Maharashtra, as Helen just talked about the number of states which we have made inroads in. In the interest of time, I'm going to jump. It was difficult to get the first state institutionalized. It took us 17 years to convince government of Maharashtra and to do evaluation of our own work. We were very afraid to do evaluation of our work. We thought, what will the women say? What will the women tell the evaluator, whether they were helped or not? There were lots of questions because we have never done that kind of an evaluation before this. And when the evaluation happened, we realized that we were able to do many things with women, and the government was very, very happy with the outcome of the evaluation. And immediately the money was put where the mouth was, and a scheme of in Maharashtra turned out to be that Mahila Samupadeshan Kendra in Polisancha Avarat in police station was established, was started in 2005. And then began the journey of learning lessons from Maharashtra, and we were able to go to different states, and we got invitations from different states looking at Maharashtra's work, because everybody in the country looks to Maharashtra. Though you don't have the kimmat in Maharashtra, nobody values me in Maharashtra, but I will get airfares to go to Bihar, I will get airfares to go to Delhi police, and I will get airfares to go to Rajasthan. So you are much more valued in an outside world. And Rajasthan called us, and Rajasthan set up, asked us to do a women's groups came together, and police came together and put a system together. It's called, the approach is now got different names in different states, and different approach has evolved in a state specific context in its own in its own way. So where there was a vibrant Mahila movement in like Rajasthan, we got Mahila Salhas Evam Suraksha Kendras got established with the help of a franchise model. And then when we went to Haryana, when we were invited by the United Nations Development Project, and we went to Haryana, and when Haryana opened up its doors for us, when I was trying to say bye-bye, and they said, no, you wait, the PWDVA, the Domestic Violence Act is just being passed, we will need you, and don't go away. So after 1 year of piloting in Haryana, we got invitation to help them to set up special cells in every district of Haryana. And the beauty of that approach was that because there's a vacuum of civil society in Haryana, though we did coordinate with Kurukshetra University, there's a vacuum of civil society groups in Haryana, and there is only CAPS and very few good organizations working in Haryana. And we got the social workers to get the powers of the protection officers under the law and powers of child marriage prohibition officers under the law. And these two laws were actually being implemented through the special cells model. And I think that was the beauty of this approach in Haryana. So what I'm trying to make a point is that it is a on ground, the context which drives the approach to take its own shape, which was a very beautiful thing happened with Special Cell. Also, a very organically developed the second field action project, the Resource Center for Interventions on Violence Against Women, which evolved out of the need of research, advocacy, and state partnerships. We needed to all the special cells were mushrooming in all the country, where people were inviting us, people were encouraging us to come and pilot in their states, but we needed a backup office where we could actually hold up the model. We could initiate, innovate, support, nurture these effective interventions on the ground. For that, we needed a robust support system, for which we developed a Resource Center on Interventions on Violence Against Women, where we did research, advocacy, and handholding, and developing partnership with various states. So over the last 2 decades, we moved from Rajasthan to Haryana, Haryana to Delhi. We demonstrated in Delhi, and all these Western states have institutionalized the special cell model as a state program. So now it is being fully funded by the state, and this is very important for all of us to understand here, is that police is a state subject. And you cannot go to the center and ask for money, and nobody will listen to you. You have to go and work and demonstrate in every state system and the DGP, and you have to you have to do the jugalbandi and ask for little time to demonstrate, and then make the ghar bana ke reh jao. Once they give you permission for 6 months, then nobody takes away your permission. The DGP will go away, but you will stay. So one time when I went to the CP Mumbai, and they would say to me that you're still here, it's 20 years and you're still here. And that's the beauty I would like to tell the group here, that I'm a second liner. I'm not a pioneer. I did not start this work. I came 4 years after the field action project was initiated by Professor Apte and Anjali Dave and Ashutosh Dharmadhikari. But when I came in, there was a staying power which is required. You need to have the perseverance. You need to have somebody needs to hold the ideological flag there to be able to tell them that, boss, how are we going to go step by step? I understand that what Jaru talks about and Minar talks about moving on and, letting the leadership to others. But even you're working with state system, people become very important. They become pivotal. They look at Trupti's name. They look at Vijay's name. And that particular thing sells of Tata Institute. And I think field action project in the Tata Institute of Social Sciences has a value by itself, which you leverage.
2 more minutes, Trupti.
Yeah, how many minutes? 2 minutes. Oh,
2 more minutes.
Okay, 2 more minutes. So what is the ground covered by this particular work which we have done? So the ground covered is right from placing of students in the first of all, creating a space in the criminal justice system for social services. The recognition that social services is required and it can be institutionalized in police station is something which we have been able to do in at least 6 states. Yeah. Now we are actually trying to do and another thing is that through students, somebody said very interestingly that it is very important for us to take the theory to practice and practice to theory. And I think that is very, very important. And I think we have paid a lot of attention to doing research, intervention researches, taking those intervention researches back to police training, back to judiciary, telling them and talking from their own police data back to them, trying to impact policy. Because of that, we also got counseling and services back into the state policy, like Maharashtra state policy, MP state policy. We've also influenced Gujarat state policy that way. So that's a very important area which you can start contributing, because you're working at systemic, structural, and individual change level, which is very, very important. Another very important thing which I think has made a lot of differences. I have developing curriculum. I think it's very important to develop relevant modules and curriculum on violence against women, which we have been able to do. I've also brought in violence against women in the teaching, as like Professor Lambe was telling us about, which is very, very important. And another very important area of work which we have done is done publications to be able to, for people to read. We could do much more because we have so much more data. We definitely, as people fall short in doing publication, books, researches, and evaluations, it's very, very important. At the same time, it's also very important to fight the state. You have to have your staying power, fight the state by PILs, when they indiscriminately change the law, you have to show the data to the state, may it be Supreme Court, may it be High Court of Mumbai. We have made a lot of that kind of inroad, and that is the strength of the FAP, I think. And the challenges with this FAP of working with the state, last 2 minutes I will take, is that the state is very slow to change. So you have to have your staying power to be able to work with the state. Also, that you have to stay with your ideology. We were feminist social work ideology. We are a feminist approach and social work skills and approach, which is very, very important mixture, which I have now developed into feminist social work interventions करके हमने वो approach बनाया है, which is very important indigenous work of multi-agency response in the state with a feminist social work ideology, where feminist approach and social work skills and values come together to make this very, very important contribution from the ground, which is very, very important. Also very important is that how do you not allow state to make very important areas into NGO areas? They want to give everything outsourcing. They don't want to respond to very core areas of violence against women and crime against women as their own work. They want to get social NGOs to come and do a franchise model, and they now don't want to take state ownership. I think that is very important, that how do you not make these mandates into NGO mandates and keep help the state to think in the institutionalized model. And the last point which I want to make is about ideology. Zero tolerance to violence against women should be sacrosanct, and I think very difficult in the way in which somebody, I think Minar raised the concern. So many colleges of social work, the ideology is diluting, the principles and the education is diluting. How do we hold on to the ideologies and principles and values of our profession and our work to be able to harness it much better in the outside world? Sorry, one more last point I want to talk about is the value of university. I think when you are doing field action projects in universities, I think the very important part of this particular strength and benefit of being in TIS is that we are able to harness TISS's name, its administration, its accounts, its goodwill, wherever you go, especially when you are working with state systems. I think that is very important. Also, research and innovation, which happens on a continuous basis, which needs to be looked at, and that integration of learning and doing is extremely important. And last but not the least is rich academic ecosystem of the institute where we are working in. May it be Kurukshetra University, may it be Nagpur University, or may it be Tata Institute. How good the ecosystem is, and how do we harness their faculty strength? How do we harness their research strength to make our work scalable and sustainable? I think Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra.
Thank you so much, Trupti, as usual. I'm so sorry that all of you have to cut short so much, because there's so much that we can really learn. And
no issues.
We want more. Anyway, now it's time for our discussants. We have two discussants, and I'll make a short introduction, of them. One is Miss Sneha Mishra. She's a well-known social worker and activist in Odisha. She is graduate of science and with botany from RD Women's College, and holds a master's in social work and an NLB from Utkal University. So well accomplished. Ms. Neha Mishra is the founder of AINA, an organization promoting the rights of children, women and persons with disabilities in Odisha and India. She serves as the president of Odisha Professional Social Workers Association. She's a trainer and resource person on issues of gender, child rights, disability, and the POSH Act. She has been serving as an independent member to the Internal Complaints Committee in many government and corporate organizations, and served on boards, and committees in many government and corporate organizations. Now AINA has developed an accessible app for the visually and hearing challenged people called Red Talk on menstrual hygiene and related issues. She has published a number of papers and conducted studies on issues of children, women, and disability issues. Sorry, Sneha, I hope you're there somewhere. Sneha?
Yes, I'm here, Helen.
Okay, all right. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. So you could raise your questions.
Thank you,
and-
Helen ma'am. It's really humbling. I mean, with all those introductions, which is not required, I think. And this is really a pleasure, and what a I mean, like atmosphere of wisdom that you have actually created today. And we always look forward to these speakers, those who have really set examples in the professional social work arena. And here they are, all of them together. So this is definitely a rare opportunity. And in fact, I'm quite overwhelmed with the discussion that Jeru has actually begun with on the child rights, child line, and all that. And who doesn't know about it? If Jeru is there, then I just have like some questions to that. In fact, definitely it has broadened the scope of professional social workers when the child line was actually formed, and I mean, maybe as a field action program, but then it has scaled up. I mean, scaled up for the nationwide and all that. So, how do you, as founder of this, feel at this point of time, whether it is actually going on in a direction that you have thought of, or it has, just taken off to a different direction? That is something which you can discuss, and also how Childline can play a crucial role at this point of time in the juncture of COVID, when many children are actually, they are in need of care and protection, I would say. In fact, every day I see a number of children, they have become the rag pickers, let's say. I mean, they have joined the rag pickers community, which were not there earlier. So, how do we see the role of Childline, and how could we, think of, incorporating these services within the child and that? And yeah. Helen ma'am, do I have all the questions for all the speakers, and then they come on to the
Mangesh is good.
Yeah, maybe that is better, because then we will spend a lot of time, going
Right.
back and forth.
Helen,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I have to jump off. So I actually was trying to.
Okay,
wave
okay,
bye
sorry.
bye
So
to
I think
everybody.
maybe Jeru can go first, because she has to
I'm
leave.
really sorry. I'm on the runway and in the plane.
Not a-
So if I drop off
Yeah,
while talking,
okay,
you all
okay.
will know why. Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
basically,
okay.
I'm really sorry. I apologize again, but I really wanted to listen to this conversation. So thank you very much. With Childline, I think the main thing I can say is that um, when you go to the government, you have to remember. I remember what I had been taught, which is the management 80-20 principle. So I'd say 80% of the things that we had hoped are still very much there. Child rights is still at the core. Services are still there. 20% I think has dropped. And I think one of the main reasons why 80% has stayed despite being part of a government project or having a partnership is because we insisted on having academic organizations as the nodal organizations and right in the management model, and ensured that delivery would always be through civil society organizations, through NGOs. And that also we made sure was put into the training. Having said that, it's 80-20. I have lived my whole life on 80-20. 80% of your values and cores will stay, 20% always gets diluted. So that's my very honest and frank answer to that. I hope that answers it. And I apologize. Yeah, I apologize once again that I really have to run. I wish I were there till the last bit, but now I've got enough dirty looks. So thank you. Thanks everyone for a wonderful
Thanks a lot
session.
for
It's
thinking
been
about
really
those
good. Thanks.
non-negotiables, Jaru, before you
Yeah.
enter into the agreement. I think that is an important aspect which you are actually telling here, to have your non-negotiables even if you are negotiating with government, even if you are thinking about
Yes.
upscaling it. And thanks for that
Yes.
course,
Yeah.
like that you are forcing it and then you have put it into the paper. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jaru, for that.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks
you
a
so
million.
much,
Thanks,
Jeru,
folks.
and have a good
Thanks.
flight. Be safe.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, and
Thanks.
travel
Bye-bye.
safe and stay safe.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah, coming back to Minarji, I think we met once. I remembered when I was in Yuba, Mumbai training center. I mean, in the new Mumbai, just doing a big kind of passing. And it's really great to hear from you, your journey and all that. And I think you're very passionate talking about how you balance between the urban and rural, and then getting into a like social sphere of developing youth and
You
organizing.
have 2 minutes, 2 more minutes. Sorry
me?
to mention, you
Yeah.
have 2 more minutes as a discussion.
Sure. So how do you think, I mean, organization like Yuva, or even looking at the youth now, because you've seen a much more in like hatred and criminal activity they are into in today's, like era. So how do I mean, we as professional social workers can bring a change or bring some input to this very critical group here in India and engage them into positive activities. Whether organizations like Yuba are in need of that, or we require some flagship program like, Nehru Yuva Kendra, something like that, and then what are the changes that they can actually incorporate. So maybe you can talk about that. And moving on to, like Farida ji, I think it is really, heartening to hear from you. And we are really, I'm really fortunate to hear all those things from you. And the one question which I have for you is regarding the involvement of professional social worker, which has been endorsed by the National Education Policy now. And from here, how could we actually take it forward? And then like Jeru said, what could be the non-negotiables even when the social workers are entering into this? Because what I have heard is like there is a plan of also involving students from psychology background in this, even though they are saying it is school social workers, but then students from psychology background are also getting into this forum. So how do we look at things from the national education policy point of view? And Vijayji, it is really nice hearing you. And in fact, I have also done a study on the criminal justice system, and it is really always, like we look forward to a deliberation on that. And I was thinking, I mean, like, how, what are the, like efforts that you have done for the inmates of the jail over there? And do you think this is something which has to be upskilled, or it has to be, it should happen in all the jails, or how do we actually look at that? Because if I look into the jails here in Odisha, or even the juvenile homes, we do not have a specific social worker position over there. So where are we, after so many years, why can't we think about having professional social workers over there? So what are the steps we can actually take forward for that? So maybe if you just could think about that and could respond. And Tripti ji, it is really because this is somewhere I connect with you, because I mean, being women, we are also taking up a lot of cases and always struggling with the police, judiciary, and all that. And I think you have find a way out by establishing the women's cells. But my whole thing is like, in today's time, you have seen a lot of the one-stop center that has come up at least in district level and all that. So how do you look at these one-stop centers and then the women's cells, vis-a-vis the women's cells, and do you think these are the alternatives, or these are the things which also can replace the women's cell? Or what are the additional features it should have, and how do we actually, as professional workers, social workers can contribute to that? And the second thing which I was actually thinking about, as social work educational institution, what kind of role they have in preventing the violence against women or the gender-based violence, because it is rampant, it's been increasing in multifold. So do you have a very comprehensive role to play over there, or what could be our
Neha, your time is up.
I'm done. Thank you, Professor.
It would be good if we can ask questions. Otherwise, for each person, it might take much more time. Sorry. Would you like to answer these questions? What do we do, Professor Devi Prasad? Should we?
No, there is another discussion.
There is one. There is one more. Should we ask his questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Helen, I have this opinion. There is Jose Anthony, who is also discussant. I request Jose Anthony to offer his remarks and leave the rest of the time for others to ask questions. That would be fine.
Okay.
I think. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll just briefly introduce Dr. Jose Anthony, who's our second, he's master's and doctoral in social work, and he's head of the Department of Social Work, Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kerala, Kaladi for 14 years and is now professor in the same department. He has got a lot of things, in his favor, including, doing a lot of research and writing a lot of articles. I'm not going into the details. I'm so sorry, Dr. Jose Antony, but I'm sure we would be able to share this with the others. But I would request you to kindly ask your questions. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Helen ma'am, Devi Prasad sir, and the great illuminaries who have really shared your great experiential learning as well as contributions to the social work profession. I'm really, privileged to be in this gathering because I'm not much familiar with the people who are here, but I'm really lucky and feel proud to be here in this platform. And I thank the organizers, specifically the Council for the organizational system, which is working for the National Council for Social Work. I was really lucky to get the origin, development, philosophy, and the historical initiatives taken by people to make Yuva, then Childline, Pratham, Special Cell for Women and Children in the police system, Vijay Raghavan sir working with the correctional administrative system and all. So it is really motivating for me to think about it and listen to you all people. And basically, I am an educator in social work department. And my reflection is basically on what is happening in the contemporary social work educational sector. That's what I'm trying just to share. Then I will leave the platform for the discussion. I'm not making any question because I was really listening to you all. First thing, what has happened is our curriculum of social work education has become too theory-laden or conventional and essentially exam-oriented now. This is what I read from the curriculum analysis throughout the national scenario. Second, the space for free thinking, critical reflections, creative initiatives have become minimal in the educational institutions. Therefore, what is happening? As an educator, I really feel the process of theorization and the process of practice both are limping now. We learn theories, but we never theorize. We hear about practice, but we don't initiate. This is the dichotomy I feel with the curriculum today. Third concern I'm really feeling is the teachers, the social work educators are too much laden with administrative, documentary, and assessment-based educations now. Because we are asked to make a lot of administrative processes, we are asked to make a lot of documentations, we are asked to make the organization prepared for NAC, NERF ranking, different type of assessments. And these type of systems have made social work educators too much, limited to be with the academic so-called in courts, I would say, academic parameters. So the space for free thinking, field initiatives, linking what we do in the field with the theoretical discourses are really lost with. And I myself, with all my apologies, would like to call me as a maintenance manager than an educator now. Because I'm asked to maintain everything in the department. Because I'm head of the department, I have to teach, I have to do all administrative processes. On the other side, I think it's very difficult to compare the other social work educations with TISS or Nirmala Niketan or Delhi School of Social Work. Because the majority of the social work educations in India are really struggling with understaffed problems or no administrative supports, no financial facilities, not even with good civil society support mechanisms, and too much of gripping processes by the government programs, government initiatives, or government control mechanisms. So we cannot have free thinking, we cannot have critical thinking, we cannot make any creative initiatives, or we cannot even take our students and to the field and really ask them to put up something new. because they are too conventional, too exam oriented, too grade oriented, too much systemic in that process. Like, so the profession is, or curriculum is existing in the past, I would say. We are nostalgic about what has happened in the past. We all really feel afraid and fail to speak about the contemporary Indian context. That's what I really feel with, because we cannot.
Yes, you have 2 more minutes.
Okay, I can finish with sir. So we are not in a position to deliberate on the social context in India, political context in India, cultural context in India, in classrooms. If we do that, we will be branded and we will be taken off. We will be really taken into the margins. We are so vulnerable today. The social work faculty are really vulnerable today. That's what I would say. So because we are getting minimized with this free, critical, reflective thinking space in the educational institutions now. And this is what I really want to propose once we think about any sort of creative initiatives like action projects or community projects, or linking practice with the theoretical discourses, or taking the theoretical discourses into the field practical, and defining social work in India, specifically in the new India. So this is a challenge, I believe. In the context, I've just shared 3 of my experiences with. One is we had a partnership program for sex health in Kerala, through which we have made an impact in Kerala context, thereby the sex health projects, which were mainly owned and operated by the non-governmental organizations, through one of our research program, has taken into the CBOs.
Dr. Jose, the time is up. Why don't
I'll finish with
time for others?
One more experience.
Questions.
Now we are facilitating with the government, with the educational department, through a study on socio-psycho-emotional problems of students in Kerala schools. We are working with SCRT to make a policy with that. Third one is, as Vijayaraman sir also is involved with us, we are doing a statewide study on probation and correctional pluralism, so that we will be able to work with the government to make probation system revamped. So these are the initiatives we are working as field action projects in Kerala context, and I believe we are really controlled with the administrative systems in the process.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Helen, we have 7 minutes. Yeah, 7 minutes. You can.
But we could have some more time, maybe about 5-10 minutes, if it's possible. We would like the speakers to respond.
Helen, those who have not spoken may be given priority. Those who want to ask questions.
Dr. Asha Rane wants to say something.
Asha Banu, okay. You were saying something, Jay?
Mrs. Rane, you are muted.
Yeah. But Dr. Devi Prasad, can you?
Mrs. Rane wants to ask
Mrs.
a question.
Rane, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, please, Mrs. Rane.
First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers of the webinar, which is on a very important topic. And all the speakers I know very well. I'm proud my students, Jeru and Trupti, are doing wonderful work. And even Vijay Raghavan, Helen, Farida, all my colleagues. I don't want to ask any question. I want to share my 2 viewpoints. First of all, if you see the growth and expansion of these field action projects, those who have moved and delinked from the institutes of social work have grown. So I personally feel no field action project should remain in the School of Social Work for a permanent basis. Yeah. You have to integrate into systems like family code, special cells. It became a part of a system. And then the continuing funding is possible. Even municipal schools, even mine. See, I started field action project way back in 1989, Hamara Club, but we have become an independent NGO. And since we became an NGO, it has expanded its coverage of beneficiaries in terms of more projects. We have 2 childline projects, one city childline and railway childline. So that is my viewpoint. Second is documentation. See, Tata Institute's special issue of Indian Journal of Social Work has 2 volumes, which had documented all the field action projects of TISS. Because publications and documentation of field action projects is very important for not only for wide publicity, but for other schools of social work institutes to get ideas about the creative projects to start on various social issues. And thirdly, it's my personal experience. Any particular faculty, depending on one's own interest of areas of work, starts field action project. But if that person leaves or retires, nobody is ready to take up the responsibility. And some director had suggested me to close down the project. But I took a challenge. I didn't close down. In fact, we expanded our scope of work. So when School of Social Work starts any field action project, it should evolve some policy that the concerned faculty, if leaves or retires, what will be the future of that project? That is my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Professor Devi Prasad, take it over. Yeah.
Helen, do I have a minute?
Yeah.
Who's this?
This is Bhavna Mehta.
Yes, Bhavna, please.
Oh,
Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I know you all are, we all are short of time, but just it was pleasant to, to hear to Professor Lambe after a very long time, and see Minar and Trupti, with whom I shared college days. Just quick, my, feedback on what Jose Antony said. I could completely understand and see myself and pain with which he was saying, being in an administrative position and the kind of, the way academic institutions are run nowadays. However, the ray of hope or the light is that most of these field action projects are started by students of social work and not by teachers. So only the role of a teacher at that time could be more as a mentor or a supporter, encourager, motivator to the student and help them shape up this project. Projects will go a long way in having field action projects, because once they start doing well, academic institution also wants to take a credit of, that how proud we are of our students who have done such a wonderful work. So I think hand-holding of these students in terms of, helping them nurture their dream also could be a wonderful contribution as a schools of social work we could make. So while the situation is very grim around in terms of a lot of things happening, the students' vibrancy and their innovativeness, I have a full faith on. So I think we should take from there and move ahead and have many more projects. And we have, Mohammad Tariq doing wonderful work as well. And that is something that younger second line generations and the third line generations are doing. Yeah. Let's support them in our own way, whatever possible. I think that's all is my I couldn't stop but to say that. Thank you. I'm sorry I can't put my mic on because I'm on a road walking. So, but I hope I made my point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Shall we take one more question? There are any questions to be asked?
Trupti, you're muted.
I think even Vijay Raghavan had something to say.
Yeah, so, Vijay.
Maybe
so I just wanted to ask whether we can respond to some of the points that have been raised.
Yeah. Let us take more time and do this very important task. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So thanks for all those very reflective comments and points that have come through this discussion. I want to quickly respond to a couple of points which are there in my mind. One is a question that was asked specifically to me about how does one upscale prison reforms across the country? How do you take the learnings of the Field Action Project to other states? And my suggestion or my answer to that would be that there are three ways in which it can be done. One is how can one encourage other schools of social work to start with fieldwork placement in criminal justice settings. And that's something that Prayas have been trying to do continuously by going and faculty members and doing orientation sessions with students, etc. And in a few places, they have started fieldwork in prisons or in courts, police stations, etc. So unless and until it is taken to, in terms of social work schools taking this up, I think it will not happen. Second is by mentoring organizations which want to work in this space. And that is again something that at Prayas we have tried to do. Whenever any of our students have wanted to start similar initiatives, we have supported them and continue to support them. Today, there are at least 6 to 7 NGOs working in this space where Prayas has played some role in that. And the third area is through public interest involvement in PILs. Is again a way by which prison reforms can come about. In fact,
Farida, can you please mute yourself so that we can hear Vijay more clearly?
Just to respond to Snehaji's comment about situation in Odisha, we are currently involved in a PIL which is going on in Odisha High Court, where the Chief Justice has initiated a PIL on prison reforms, and we are one of the experts who have been asked to give suggestions. We have given the suggestions, and the court has included many of our recommendations in its final order. So I think it can be done. We have done this in UP. We have done this in Maharashtra. We have done this in Uttarakhand currently. We've been asked, a 3-member committee has been set up. We are one of the members to bring about prison reforms in that state. So these are the 3 ways by which I think it can be done. One point I want to raise is that increasingly at TISS, we find lesser and lesser faculty wanting to start field action projects. And what is the reason for that? And the reason for that, in my opinion, is the pressure on faculty to publish. And therefore, there is a privileging of publication vis-a-vis field action and field work. Because when you come to your API points, how much ever work and advocacy you have done and what kind of changes you've brought about in the field, that doesn't get counted. What gets counted is, what kind of API, scores you have based on peer-reviewed international journals, etc. So,
you got muted.
You've got muted.
Sir, your sound is muted, sir.
Sorry. I said younger faculty members are thinking that why should we waste so much of our time on doing field-related work which doesn't fetch us anything in terms of our promotions or in terms of our API scores. So if we are going to talk about a national council role, we must build in a component of having separate points for people who initiate field action and are sustaining field action work. So that is one concrete point. And secondly, I want to also say that in social work, you can have positions of professor of practice. It's there in many countries. So you have people who come in for their academic kind of background, and then you also bring in distinguished people from the field, and you call them professor of practice. So that is also something that I feel could be thought of when we are talking about this, what is it that the council can do in terms of influencing. Lastly, my one point is I'm very happy that Farida brought up the issue of paraprofessional workers. Where are paraprofessional workers being thought of in this council? Is there any discussion or thought? They constitute the bulk of the field workers in the country. And if we are only limiting ourselves to creating BSWs and MSWs, then I think we are going to do a disservice to the bulk of the people on whose shoulders today in fact, I don't find too many Tata Institute social workers going and working in the field anymore. They are mostly there in monitoring, evaluation, documentation, research, training. The actual work is being done by field workers, paraprofessionals. And what is the council's role when it comes to encouraging, supporting the work of paraprofessional social workers? This is one of my pet peeves with.
Again, you are muted.
Got muted.
Again, you are muted.
I'm ending here. I just said that it is one of my pet peeves the council is not looking at the whole issue of paraprofessional social workers and field workers and limiting itself to BSW and MSW education. Thank you.
Helen, can I come in to respond to some of the issues?
Yes, Minar, please. Please.
Okay, thank you. So just 3 points. One is the last point that Vijay made. We had this very important paraprofessional program in College of Social Work. I do not know what happened after I left, but UVA took on the mantle and we built something called the Urban Animated Training Programs and the Youth Animated Training Program. And I'm very proud that most of the cadre that Farida has in the schools of social work at the ground level are the people who were trained as paraprofessional social workers or urban youth animators or the youth animated training program people. And it is a heavy investment project, but I think you also had to discontinue because funders are now looking for impact-driven projects. They are not looking into projects which have an investment and a long duration of the impact coming through the training kinds of process. So that's the point that Vijay is making. It's very significant that how do we bring that back into the academic institutions to take that process forward. Responding to Sneha's point in terms of, the old structures of NYKs, NCCs, are not necessarily the fit for purpose for the new work with the youth. That needs to be looked at very carefully. Lot of the youth movements, and I do not agree that the youth is in the criminal side. There's a very small fraction of youth into the criminal activity, but large number of youth. Actually, if you look at now the climate change movement globally, or you look at the whole, Black Lives Matter globally, they're all young people who are leading some of these movements globally. So there's a very strong energy which is coming into those areas. So use of social media, use of technology is the new harbinger of mobilizing young people. And if we are not able to institutionalize that very carefully in part of the curriculum, as part of the tools, the new tools that need to be adopted. Because I don't know in today's social work curricula whether there is any emphasis on this new social media and how to use that social media for really extensive work on in terms of scale up and institutional approach and building that kind of a movement. The third point which I want to make, and I'll stop there, there is a strong push of polarization in different countries, not only in India, and this links to Joseph's points. Whether it is US, UK, Turkey, Hungary, you look name Philippines, India, there's a whole polarization kind of a politics which is going on, which is really impacting on this whole issue. Earlier, intellectual caliber, research, data-driven policy making were really given a value. That is now actually devalued in the process. So in that sense, there's a whole challenge of the academic freedom and the kind of debate discussion that I have experienced during my student days. I don't see that happening. Rather, people are fearful on raising contrary points to any issues. Anything which is data driven and says this policy is incorrect, this is not the way to go. And you can see the slew of recent legislation that have come from center as well as in different states, absolutely contrary to any data-driven policy-making process. So I think that is something which academic institutions, especially social work forums, need to be really highlighted very carefully. And that's where my last point in my presentation was, how do we locate the Indian constitutional framework? Because we are now all celebrating the 75 years of the Indian independence. In next 2 years, it will be 75 years of Indian Republic. How do we use that opportunity in the National Council to really bring that debate of really commitment to social work, of education values in the context of Constitution and Universal Declaration of Human Rights? So I think that is important to really bring it back into our thinking, into the discourse. If we don't do that, it is a missed opportunity in the present context of India, which is quite dire and quite really problematic, to be honest, with the way the universities are being turned around into, the carriers of a particular ideological process and particular thinking process, and devaluing any intellectual capital and valuing those who are basically, like what I call andhabhakts, who are basically following a particular kind of, Twitter education, WhatsApp education, becoming a dominant process. And how do we counter that narrative that is coming globally, not only in India, is I think the challenge that we should look at I hope that National Council will take that as one of the agendas of education as well as practice in social work going forward. So thank you for having me. It was great. It was very enriching.
Dr. Devi Prasad,
So Devi Prasad, can I step in? Can I put? Can I?
and me
Can I
also,
respond?
Prabha for half minute.
Yes.
After Ms. Lambe.
Okay,
I think
I just wanted
yeah,
I'll be brief, Mr. Devi Prasad. I want to respond to
please,
Minar. He was worried about paraprofessionals, the College of Social Work.
please be
Hello,
brief.
I'll be brief. I have not even started talking.
Yeah,
Uh,
please.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Please go
Yeah.
ahead.
So, the College of Social Work has continued paraprofessional diploma. It's a 1-year course and it's a part of the university. And it's also running the Urban Animators program, which is not a diploma, but it is a certificate course. So I think that College of Social Work has continued. That's one which I wanted to tell Minar and others. Secondly, Sneha asked some questions. I just want to quickly respond. In terms of the non-negotiables for school social work, that you need to be child specific and child centered. In school social work, there's a clinical model which leans towards counseling, but we need to go more in terms of community engagement and the systemic change. Because, and as Trupti was very rightly saying, that the government is all out to give a franchise model and outsource, things. But as I personally and as we as social work people should say that government's primary responsibility, as per the constitution is concerned, is primary education and defining the child as the word, as the age of 18. So it is the government's responsibility. So my take on what you were saying is that my non-negotiable will be, don't weaken the government system, strengthen the government system and reach the unreached. And the third point, Mr. Devi Prasad, I want to make is that there are lots of challenges when you have to make the system work. And one of the experiences has been that if the head of that system gets transferred or it changes, the entire project or the entire policy goes through a toss. So as schools of social work and as colleges, we should be mindful that while we have personal relationships or relationships with the head of the organization, you need to build bridges with the middle management also. So your work, what you do, should not start from the top, but it should start from the bottom and the middle, so that there is an ownership. And lastly, to Dr. Arani's point, Asha's point, that when the faculty leaves, yes, the project suffers, but it shouldn't. And that's the first thing that you should do. That it is not individual, it's a system. So individual will come and go, systems will stay. And if the colleges of social work take ownership, I don't think the project will suffer. Yes, the level of passion, commitment may go down. And Helen, I just want to reinforce what Vijay said, that as far as the council is concerned, in the academic function, please stress, and we will all stress, this whole role of field action projects and how faculty should be encouraged to do field action projects, irrespective of how many articles they have printed, because it's really, we owe it to the country, if not also to the College of Social Work. So thank you, Mr. Devi
Thank you,
Prasad.
Farida.
Can I have 1 minute, Dr. Prasad?
I think this is almost 7:14, and if we want to finish this, I'm sorry.
One minute. I'll be taking, if you allow me.
I don't think so. I leave it to Helen. Otherwise,
Helen will just finish in
close
half
this
minute.
session.
Yeah.
Helen, I'm suggesting that we close the session with due respect to others, and also to Trupti, who should have been given time. If that decision is okay.
Helen, you are muted. She's speaking.
Yes.
Yeah,
You are muted.
You want some more?
Helen, you are.
All right. I'm sorry, Prabha. I'm sorry. We are really running short of time. And we have Trupti also. So if Trupti can just say her last words, and then we will give it to
And we will
I'm
close
so
then.
sorry, Prabha.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, Trupti.
Trupti, if you are there, you can say a few words. Hello, Trupti.
No, she's not there, I think.
She is not there, I think.
She's
Okay.
left, I think.
So maybe we will. Yeah.
She might.
So shall I conclude then,
Please.
Helen?
Yes,
Yeah?
yes.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, no need to take any more time, except it was beyond excellence session today. And thanks to all the speakers. And one complaint with Helen is that we should have had one person for 1 hour. There is so much that we need to hear from them and make sense, and then questions and all that. So maybe we can do that in future. Second point that I've observed in social work profession in India is that practice is ahead of education and education is ahead of literature. And it's that synergy that somewhere we are missing. Although we give in academic institutions give value to publications, still we are not writing. Maybe for every field action project, we must have a course written, curriculum developed, a textbook kind of published. Make sure that this is how this topic is now taught in India. Maybe it should be built into a plan of a field action project. Because so much of learning the resource persons have done, but how will that get translated into curriculum and teaching in other schools of social work? So yeah, a lot of directions that we have all gained from this session, and thank you all.
Thank you so much. I also want to say that Tata Institute has brought out 2 volumes on field action projects, and Nirmala Niketana also has done a research study, and they were trying to bring about this whole thing about theorizing from field action projects.
Yeah.
I think about 8 field action projects have been studied in depth. It was done by Dr. Gracie Fernandez. So these books are there, and we can definitely use all that information. Anyway, thank you very much, Murli. Thank you for to all the panelists, to Dr. Devi Prasad for jumping in at the right, and Professor Sanjay Bhatt, and all of you. I mean, it was excellent. As Dr. Murli said, the time was really short. 1 hour would be the ideal time for each speaker. Maybe have a session. Thank you so much.